This is a story about a collision of opposite worlds that would never normally meet. The one, a sophisticated space frequented by the art elite, where a rarefied limelight shines on cultural celebrities. The other world comprises the shadowy spaces occupied by society's underclass. Sex workers operate here on the front lines of fear. They remain largely invisible, faceless and nameless in both life and death. For almost 4 years, a group of sex workers has maintained a devoted vigil on the steps of the Cape High Court. They sing in solidarity and sisterhood for the right to be acknowledged, the right to dignity and respect. And they have been here to show their support for murder victim Nokupila Khumalo. Her alleged murderer is internationally renowned artist Zwelethu Mthethwa. Judgment will be made tomorrow, Thursday the 16th of March, the month in which both International Sex Workers' Day and International Women's Day are commemorated. Here we are at the Cape High Court, and tomorrow those steps will be filled with members of Sweat singing in solidarity with Nokupila as Judge Goliath delivers her verdict. It's been a marathon trial characterized by postponement after postponement, by trials within trials. And one of the most interesting aspects of this case is that the state's chief witnesses are the tools of technology. There was the tracking device installed in Mthethwa's Porsche that recorded his car driving from his home in Devil's Peak to Ravenscraig Road in Woodstock at the approximate time that Nokupila was murdered, and then back to his home. But the most harrowing evidence was recorded on CCTV cameras outside the building in Woodstock.
I had great trouble watching it, and I had to watch it several times over in order to describe what I see and how it correlates with the autopsy findings.
Forensic pathologist Dr. Linda Liebenberg conducted 2 autopsies on the victim. The first one was done soon after the murder, and she made a disturbing discovery.
I could see there had been a degree of blunt force to her externally. The surprise came when I did the internal examination. Her liver was torn in half. Now that is it's a fatal injury.
Yet from that fatal injury, caused by blunt force to her body, there was very little internal bleeding.
A year later, I was approached by the investigating officer who asked me to look at CCTV footage and compare what I see on screen with what I found at autopsy. And that was astonishing. That isn't something we do often. I think very rarely we get to see the way in which our patients died.
We are not allowed to show this footage, so we have attempted a reconstruction based on the scientific evidence presented in court by Dr. Liebenberg. At approximately 2:45 a.m., Ravenscraig Road is quiet. A car drives up.
Stops. A male person gets out, strides purposefully across the road and then off-screen on the left. Then for 23 seconds, nothing happens. Then, the same person that stepped out of the car rushes on screen, and simultaneously a smaller figure falls flat on her back with her legs up into the air. Immediately starts getting up onto her haunches. At the same time, the assailant is turning towards her, rushes and starts kicking, and she doesn't move again. The picture quality isn't very good, and most of the time they are exactly on the left end of the screen. At times it looks like he's leaning over her and berating her. At one stage it looks like he's pulling her head up by the hair and delivering slaps to the face. but the most repeated movement is stomping and kicking of the body.
And the assailant wasn't alone.
A second, apparently female figure comes on screen. The assailant is there watching her. Looks like she's searching the deceased's clothing. Then they have a bit of an exchange, the second female and the assailant. And after he walks across back to his car, she drags the deceased further onto the sidewalk.
That person has never come forward and hasn't been found. So from watching this brutal, repeated assault on this young woman for 5 minutes or even a bit more, what would you say the intention of the assailant was?
If I have to put myself in the shoes of that assailant, the idea is obliteration, annihilation. Not only stepping on an insect, but really squashing it. If I'd just seen the footage, I would have expected her to be black and blue, broken bones, scuffed, much more severe. And especially with the stomping, why didn't she develop bruises?
Please explain the term commotio cordis and how this relates to Miss Khumalo's death.
A relatively mild blow that strikes right over the heart at a specific time in the electrical current of the heart, stops the heart. So with all the blows to her trunk area, which is chest and abdomen, any of those potentially could have landed over the heart, stopped the heart, and with the heart stopping, the bleeding from the liver also stopped.
But the defense argued that Nokuphila might already have been dead when the assailant began stomping on her, and that there might have been more than one assailant off camera who assaulted her, causing her death.
There's no scientific way to say anything about what happened off screen because nobody says anything about that, and there's no proof either way of somebody being there and assaulting her or nobody being there. So it's pure conjecture.
Increasingly, all over the world, CCTV footage is being used as evidence in criminal trials, from cases involving home invasions to road rage and murder. Mthethwa's defense attorney, William Booth, repeatedly challenged the authenticity of the CCTV footage and alleges it might have been tampered with. The state's witnesses deny this. In total, the assault on Nokuphila lasted for 6 minutes.
Nokuphila died very quickly. Within seconds of her heart stopping, she was dead and unaware of the many minutes of being kicked.
Mthethwa declined to testify in his own defense. In the absence of an alibi, he insisted he had no recall of the events. And after the defense had closed its case, Booth requested it to be reopened to introduce new evidence. An invoice for the amount of 2,500 rand purchased at a Gugulethu Shebeen on the night before the murder. Judge Goliath allowed the defense to present its evidence. Booth called psychiatrist Professor Tuvia Zabo, who testified that Mthethwa told him he suffered from periodic bouts of alcohol-induced amnesia. It seems that the only thing he remembered about that night was that he did not kill Nokuphila Khumalo.
We make sure to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally. For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
It is ironic that artist Zwelethu Mthethwa, the man accused of murdering 23-year-old Nokuphila Khumalo, found international fame through photography.
For most people in the art community, an international career is something that they want. And to see someone that had succeeded at that scale, I would say particularly in North America, particularly New York. If you look, New Yorker, New York Times, they've written about him.
Ironically, it was a camera that allegedly caught him in the act of savagely beating and stomping his alleged victim to death. Mthethwa's photographic and painted portraits were largely of black South Africans living in poverty on the margins of society, sometimes exuding defiance, but always dignity and the desire for a better life.
There would be the township scene, the working class, the inventiveness of the recent city immigrant and conquering adversity, and also, I suppose, retrieving dignity through decoration.
In many respects, Nokuphila Khumalo belonged to that sector of society. Like many of the so-called anonymous individuals who were Mthethwa's subjects, she also would have wanted her life to be acknowledged and remembered. Instead, it is not only her life that has been destroyed, but her name.
Mthethwa's case turned into a celebrity circus. So Nokuphila was really not really named as a woman. There was no personality and dignity given to Nokuphila. There is still none.
In 2014, Special Assignment tried to patch together fragments of Nokuphila's life through her mother. But when we first met Eva Khumalo, she was too distraught to speak. Eva, look at...
Oh, I don't want to talk.
Okay.
It is one thing for a mother to lose her child in the way that she lost Nokuphila. And then it's another to add on top of it your child's name being dragged through the mud. It's like double murder of your child.
Yet as the trial progressed, Eva began to open up about her pain.
She didn't deserve to die like that. But I already forgive him. I haven't got nothing to say to him. I just want to ask him that question. And say to him, why you do this ugly thing like that?
2 months after her murder, on the 5th of June, Nokuphila Mudi Khumalo, also known as Ntombi, was laid to rest at the West End Cemetery in Kimberley. Even in her simple funeral program, there is no photograph of Ntombi. All we know is that she was born in Kimberley on the 11th of February 1991. She was the only girl among 3 brothers. Her father was a prison warder from Eastern Cape. But he abandoned her mother, who was 19 at the time, and she left Kimberley for Cape Town. Ntombi was 7 when she joined her mother and her mother's new boyfriend in Gugulethu.
Ntombi was never out. They say, Ntombi, go. They take Ntombi like the old child of that one.
They lived around the corner from Mzoli's place, Gugulethu's famous restaurant. Her mother worked there for many years, and ironically, this was one of the places frequented by Mthethwa, the artist accused of killing her.
She was dancing at Mzoli's place with that marimbas.
She attended Nchenga Primary School, where she excelled at sport. She was also a girl guide at the Amy Beale Foundation.
She was good. She was active, good in netball, good in athletics, also like dancing and the sing. She was active.
But life was tough for her mother.
She had a problem with the man that she was living with.
She said to me she wanted to be a social worker.
Why did she want to be a social worker?
When she saw how was my situation. She was nice. You can ask her friends. She can ask who. She was a beautiful lady and everything of hers was excellent.
So why did her life take such a sad turn?
I don't know what was happening with Ntombi. It's just friends like Ntsikelelo. You see Ntsikelelo, how look Ntsikelelo?
Ntsikelelo was Ntombi's closest friend. They had both left school early, drawn to the bright lights and big dreams of the city. but they got caught up in a sordid world of sex and drugs. I went looking for Nsikolelo, a transgender sex worker who calls herself Cleo. She operates in Woodstock's Streets of Sleaze.
I wanted to be dancers and singers, but we couldn't here in the location. From there we went to party together, went parties together. From the parties, I'm the one who went to Cape Town and tasted Cape Town. So they followed me to Cape Town. She smoked a lot of drugs there, and then she got tiny and she was scared to come back home, so that their friends here, they were going to gossip about her, said she got AIDS, blah 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 blah. Understand?
She was thin, and her hair like something bite him. There's no hair here. Here's hair here. There's no hair here. Here's hair here. And I said, Ntombi, you've got TB, or listen, you've got AIDS.
Ntombi had TB, but after she was cured, she returned to the streets without her mother's knowledge.
Her mom didn't know, and her mom was worried because she didn't know where she was.
To understand more about Ntombi's increasingly risky lifestyle, I made contact with another transgender sex worker. She didn't know Ntombi personally, but was familiar with some of the places she had frequented.
It's a place where most of the sex workers come and they buy their drugs, smoke there, but also mainly to take their clients there when they have clients to see to.
It is called the Stables, and you don't want to go walking through here at night. Mind you, during the day isn't such a smart idea either. It is a derelict property controlled by drug dealers, where the stench of feces and urine is overwhelming. This sex worker knew Ntombi.
I heard at Sweet that she was killed, and it was very shocked to me, and that made me realize that every day the risk is getting bigger for us out there. In most of the cases that sex workers die, or the transgenders die, as people would say, it's drug dealing.
Often sex workers rely on substances to do their work. Because of, the criminalized framework, it opens up the doors for vulnerable people to be exploited and abused.
The fact that sex work is criminalized in South Africa poses a very risky environment for sex work in general. It means that sex workers have to work in areas that are excluded from the rest of the general public. It means that they are isolated, they move into the backgrounds, into the shadows. It means that because of those very reasons, a client, a police officer, a community member, if they should feel that their normative beliefs are not accepting of sex workers, and they feel that it's upon their right, God knows, nobody has a right over a person's body, but if they feel and have that perspective, it means that sex workers are vulnerable, sex workers are going to be attacked.
But how does a mother who lost her child even before she was murdered move forward?
I gave him to God. I forgive him. I gave him to God.
Since Nokuphila's murder, Eva's life has been dogged by loss. Her partner was murdered. She lost her job, and although she now has a new one, life remains a struggle for the heartbroken mother. The eyes of a multiple murderer, Christian de Jager. Yet nothing in their sinister expression provides a glimpse into the depravity that led this man to savagely assault, rape, murder and dismember his victims. One was 18-year-old sex worker Hiltina Alexander in 2008. Another was 16-year-old Charmaine Murray in 2014. Both crimes were committed in Cape Town. But it was only after the 2013 case that police linked him to the 2008 murder.
Had he been arrested and convicted for that murder swiftly or soon after the initial murder, the 2013 murder would not have occurred.
He was described by an expert witness as a serial killer, so there might have been many more victims. His fiancée and her daughter could not reconcile the man they thought they knew with the monster he was revealed to be. He was sentenced to 3 life terms. 6 years were handed down for dismembering Murray's corpse and 3 months for stealing her cell phone. But other punishments have not fit the crimes, perpetuating the stigma associated with sex work, like the sentencing of Paul Andrew Opperman for the murder of Anita Tumela Loba in 2013. Opperman maintained that he accidentally killed her after rough sex and was sentenced in May 2015 at the Nelspruit High Court to a mere 12 years in prison, of which 5 were suspended.
People view sex workers as second-class citizens, and I think it was Opperman who said that he hates women and he hates sex workers. So he felt that his stigma is justified against sex workers, and so his crime against sex workers is justified.
There are countless other examples. In fact, a collaborative project between Sweat and the University of Cape Town's Knowledge Co-op has found that between 1/3 and a half of sex workers experience violence in their workplace, and at least 70% of sex workers are abused by police.
Clients see the vulnerability, see the fact that sex workers can't open up cases, and they take advantage. And obviously, police officers also take the same advantage of knowing that there won't be any charges laid against them should they violate, whether it's physical, whether it's sexual.
And female sex workers are 18 times more likely to be murdered than other women. But there is some light emerging from this dark litany of violence against sex workers in the form of Say Her Name campaign.
So Say Her Name came about as a campaign. We launched it last year in December. And it's to say that, you know what, sex workers are not just the women of the night. It's women that are in the community.
Nokupila Kumalo was a daughter. She was a sister. She was a friend. Zweletu Mtetwa, the man accused of her murder, is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But no matter what the outcome of this trial, we might never really learn why she was murdered on April the 14th, 2013.
The only thing that will make me happy and see justice done is a sentence that is according, although we won't get Nokpila back.
What is certain is that her death has brought to the surface the schism between society's most marginalized and the cultural elite. The conflicting realities between the two reached a crescendo in an art gallery. To commemorate 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children, the Zico South African National Gallery curated an exhibition called Our Lady in December last year.
There was a picture of Mtetwa in there, and what we did not understand was how Izigo could actually miss the whole fact that Mtetwa is undergoing a murder trial of a woman, and actually have it, the picture, his art in such a beautiful commemoration of women's power and women's issues and women's capabilities.
Sweat strongly condemned the display and protested outside the gallery. Several prominent South African artists withdrew their work in solidarity. They also insisted that Mtetwa's photograph, a portrait of an anonymous woman, be removed. And the empty spaces where artworks once hung have become an installation and performance space of defiance, protest, and female empowerment. Translated from Xhosa, Nokuphila means mother of life. Yet in her life, she was disrespected, in death dehumanized. When Special Assignment did the story on her in 2014, we couldn't even find a photograph of her to give a face to the name. But her picture now occupies a prime position in the Zico South African National Gallery, in the very space occupied by artworks produced by the cultural elite.
What came to the fore as a result of Our Lady exhibition, which I think was also trying to address, was about the representation of women. But what actually came out very strongly and as a result of the public debate was also about very particular pockets of our community not having access to a space such as the National Gallery, and when they are represented, it's not on their own terms.
In 2015, Sweat commissioned artist Astrid Warren to paint a portrait of Khumalo after her death. It is a painting based on a crude mugshot taken after Nokuphila's arrest several years before. Sweat and Iziko reached an agreement that Nokuphila's picture would be included in an exhibition appropriately called At Face Value. Her portrait serves as a bridge between two spaces on multiple levels.
So it became very important that we see and hear Nokuphila in her own voice, or at least Sweat, which is kind of a family that she comes from. The whole experience of Our Lady was a wake-up call for the National Gallery that we have to take the issues of representation and access very, very seriously, and that in the gallery needs to be a space of learning and dialogue and be engaged and responsive to current and socio-political issues.
In a story beset by tragedy, coincidence, contradiction and paradox, perhaps this is the most fitting irony of all. Disrespected by society in life and dehumanized in death, Nokuphila Khumalo is now the name and the face for all victims of gender-based violence, especially for women who live and die on the front lines of fear.